You ever stop and wonder why Rick Sanchez, the smartest man in the entire multiverse, also seems like the most miserable? He has everything. Infinite intelligence. Technology powerful enough to wipe out civilizations. The ability to travel between dimensions. He literally conquered space, time, and death itself. So then why do we constantly see a man who drinks himself unconscious, destroys every relationship around him, and acts like he genuinely doesn't care about anything? What if Rick's cynicism isn't strength? What if all the sarcasm, jokes, and chaos are just hiding someone who completely broke under the weight of his own pain? Today, we're breaking down the psychology of Rick Sanchez, why he became this way, whether he's actually a narcissist, whether he's even capable of love, and most importantly, why the one man who could have literally anything in the universe still can't figure out how to be happy. At first glance, Rick looks like the classic crazy genius character, a drunken scientist running around with a portal gun, causing chaos everywhere he goes. But the deeper the show goes, the more obvious it becomes. Rick isn't just insane, he's broken. From the very beginning of Rick and Morty, Rick constantly mocks emotions, morality, and human connection. He says love is just a chemical reaction, that life is meaningless, that people are nothing more than biological machines pretending their existence matters. And honestly, at first, it almost feels like he believes it. But here's the weird part. The more we learn about Rick, the clearer it becomes that the man pretending not to care is actually suffering all the time. And deep down, he knows it. Rick has seen too much. He's seen infinite universes, infinite versions of himself, infinite versions of everyone else. And once you realize there are endless copies of every person in existence, death stops feeling unique. When you've seen millions of worlds, your own world starts to feel meaningless. And when you can create almost anything instantly, nothing feels valuable anymore. That's why Rick becomes a nihilist. Not because he's above emotions, but because believing nothing matters is easier than admitting how deeply everything hurts him. And that leads to the biggest question in the entire series. If Rick truly doesn't care, why does he always come back to his family? Why does he keep saving Morty Smith? Why does he sacrifice himself for people? Why does he spiral into self-destruction every time he loses someone? Because Rick is lying, not just to everyone else, to himself. One of Rick's biggest psychological traits is emotional avoidance. He doesn't know how to process pain in a healthy way. Instead, he turns everything into sarcasm, aggression, alcohol, or another science experiment. Because attachment makes people vulnerable, and vulnerability terrifies him. That's why he constantly tries to devalue emotions. If love isn't real, then loss can't hurt. If family is meaningless, then losing them shouldn't matter. If life itself has no value, then death stops being scary. But human psychology doesn't work like that. You can pretend not to care all you want. The pain still stays inside you. And the show makes that painfully obvious over and over again. One of the saddest parts of Rick's character is his relationship with Morty Smith. On the surface, it looks hilarious. A crazy grandfather dragging his grandson through insane adventures across the galaxy. But underneath all the comedy, the relationship is deeply toxic. Rick manipulates Morty, erases his memories, constantly puts him in danger, humiliates him. Sometimes he practically destroys the kid psychologically. And yet, Morty is still probably the most important person in Rick's life. Why? Because Morty is one of the only people who gives Rick something he desperately needs: emotional connection. And maybe even more importantly, someone who still looks up to him. That's a huge part of Rick's personality. He constantly needs to feel superior, smarter than everyone, more powerful than everyone, more important than everyone else in the room, which is why a lot of viewers describe him as a narcissist. But narcissism isn't just loving yourself. A lot of the time, extreme arrogance is actually covering up deep insecurity and emptiness. People try to convince the world they're special because deep down, they're terrified they're not enough. And honestly, that describes Rick perfectly. He constantly humiliates other scientists, calls himself a god, treats normal people like idiots, but it doesn't feel like confidence. feels like defense, because whenever Rick is finally alone, we see the real version of him. Exhausted, depressed, emotionally empty, a man who genuinely hates himself. And one of the darkest things about Rick is something a lot of viewers don't even notice. He doesn't actually enjoy life. Yeah, he laughs, makes jokes, causes chaos, but most of it feels less like happiness and more like distraction. Alcohol helps him silence his thoughts. Adventures keep him from being alone with himself. Science gives him control over a universe that once hurt him too deeply to trust. And that leads to the real tragedy of Rick Sanchez. He managed to conquer almost everything except himself. He conquered space. He conquered time. He even conquered death. But he never learned how to be happy, because intelligence doesn't protect people from loneliness. And honestly, that might be the main message of the entire show. A lot of people think knowledge automatically makes someone stronger, but Rick proves the opposite. Sometimes understanding the universe too well can completely destroy your ability to enjoy it. That's why Rick constantly says things like, "Don't think about it," because that's basically his entire survival strategy. Don't think about death. Don't think about pain. Don't think about the past. Don't think about your feelings, because the second Rick stops distracting himself, he has to face who he really is. And despite all the cynicism, sarcasm, and emotional walls, Rick is still capable of love. It's just broken, twisted, buried underneath fear and trauma. He loves his family, but doesn't know how to show it. He loves Morty, but keeps hurting him. He wants connection, but is terrified of attachment. And that's what makes him such a tragic character. Rick Sanchez isn't really a story about a genius scientist. It's a story about someone who lost the ability to emotionally function like a normal human being. And honestly, that's probably why so many people connect with him. Because underneath all the sci-fi chaos, portal guns, and dark humor, there's a very human fear hiding there. The fear of being alone. The fear of being vulnerable. The fear of losing people you care about. The fear of realizing that even the smartest person in the universe can still be deeply unhappy. In a weird way, Rick might actually be the perfect character for modern culture. He's ironic, detached, hyper-intelligent, emotionally unavailable, always hiding pain behind jokes and sarcasm. And people like that often end up being the loneliest. Which is why the show asks such an uncomfortable question. What if cynicism isn't strength at all? What if sarcasm and emotional detachment are just defense mechanisms for pain people never learned how to deal with? Maybe that's why Rick became so popular. Not because people see themselves as a genius scientist, but because they recognize the feeling of pretending not to care, while secretly wanting connection, acceptance, and love more than anything else. And the saddest part? Rick understands exactly what's wrong with him. He knows he's toxic. He knows he hurts people. He knows he's destroying himself. But self-awareness doesn't automatically mean someone knows how to change. And that's the real tragedy of Rick Sanchez. The smartest man in the universe turned out to be powerless against his own trauma. And honestly, that's what makes him feel so real.